And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, November 16th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But first, before we do anything, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how did your Monday end up?
Pretty normal. Lost a little bit of football, lost a little bit of basketball, nothing too crazy. Remembered to enter my correct lineups, so that's a step forward. I can feel good about that.
That certainly helps. Yeah, Bracken Peterson in chat says, Josh the GOAT, great calls yesterday, my man. I wish I would have played my own great calls. That would have been a more profitable experience, I guess, for me. I mean, I guess I did, but... I
just read that as sarcasm.
Oh, that's fair. The thing is, it might actually be just sarcasm. Clint Capella was really good yesterday. That was probably one of the firmer stands that I had verbally, at least on a show yesterday. I needed Spencer Dinwiddie to give up that awful performance, and he certainly did for the first quarter, and then had no problem becoming essential on the slate.
That was one of those slates. Like, I look back at it, and like, I had a decent amount of Dinwiddie, but I ended up playing more Hero. I ended up playing more Cole Anthony when Jalen Suggs was ruled out. I had
a ton of Cole Anthony.
Yeah, I ended up playing a bunch of Ricky Rubio, who like obviously did well, but was essentially useless on the slate. I had a ton of Cade Cunningham, and so like me and Alex were talking about football yesterday, and I said that the football slate Sunday was just sort of one of those where you kind of have to look at it and realize you're just not going to win that slate when it plays out that way. And that's kind of how I felt about basketball too. Like a lot of low-owned guys that I played did really, really well, but it didn't matter because the popular guys also did really, really well. So it didn't nobody really got eliminated from winning on a popular play yesterday, with the exception of like Evan Mobley and Kevin Huerter.
Evan Mobley, wild game. Did not expect 0 for 11 from the field.
Yeah, I was really confused when I looked and he had 1 point in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so was I. Dinwiddie coming in at 54% ownership on FanDuel on an 11-game slate at 65. Like, I was just like, okay, I'm happy to not have this because there's a 50-50 shot this works out. And like, he doesn't hit that mark that frequently. And sure as shit he did. Didn't change anything. Played 34 minutes, 51.5 fantasy points. Just worked out quite well. You get a day like Jokic going for 66 and it's pedestrian because Clint Capella drops 57.5. I had a lot of the 2x the field on Capella, had a lot of Monty Morris, had a lot of the pieces, but just being light on Dinwiddie, he was the linchpin for everything for me.
Yeah, I didn't win the 100K, but I do take credit for it. The person who won was tweeting, complaining about Cole Anthony doing well. And I'd suggested to him earlier in the day that he just get better at DFS when he had said something. And then I replied to that and said, I see you did not choose tonight to get better. And then he ends up winning the tournament. So I'll take credit for talking him into that one.
Is it a pro or anything?
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you know him, but
okay. I didn't know if it was just like a random Twitter person or not, and then they ran into it, or if it was just somebody that like regularly plays. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Big one at Alonzo too. Another one of the guys that I had a ton of that ultimately meant nothing for me across the board because of my lack of Spencer Dinwiddie. I had a lot of Chetty heading into original lock, or right prior to lock, until he was not named a starter, which I fully expected. Once I changed that up, that hurt. Anyway. Another great game out of Porzingis too, by the way. 54 on FanDuel. It's a big one. That's enough about yesterday. You know what we should talk about? Today's slate. 3 games, easy to manage. Weird for some of these rotations because there's a lot of garbage in like the 6 through 10 spots in some of these rotations that are going to make people some money. Before we dive into the first game, schedule for the rest of the day. NFL Strategy Show comes up at 11 o'clock. The NHL Strategy Show comes up at 2. We've got a No House Advantage NBA show at 3. PGA Strategy Show at 4. And then since lock is at 7:30 today, NBA Deeper Dive at 5:30. NBA Live before lock at 6:30. Our NBA ownership projections are free. Our PGA rankings are free. And our NHL top stacks are free. I need to grab our ownership before we get started. But I'm really excited to talk about this first game, and in particular, the first team that we're going to touch on. So let's just dive into it if you are ready.
Yep.
The Golden State Warriors, 2.5-point dogs in Brooklyn, 220 total. For Golden State, everybody's healthy. Everybody is in, that has been in at the very least. Like, it's not like Clay's back. Joe Harris is out for the Nets. No Nick Claxton, no Paul Millsap. The Harris piece is pretty important. We're going to start on the Golden State side. And clearly, on a slate like today, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, the guys that play 30 minutes or more, just full stop, going to look at least functional. What's going to really make or break this slate is figuring out who gets the extra minutes on Golden State. If someone gets any extra minutes, whoever gets to like 20 might be the guy that is essential. Everybody looks like garbage to me, but I'm excited to talk about it. Let's start at the top with Curry, 10-8 on FanDuel, 10-9 on DraftKings.
Yeah, he obviously looks great. Any amount of Curry you can get to, you're going to be pretty happy with. There's plenty of other pay up options on the slate as well. But right now we have Curry projected for a little bit less ownership on DraftKings than Durant, than George, than Harden. I think they all project similarly, so I don't really mind. It's a situation I don't really mind, just kind of taking the lower owned one where I can. Curry's been great this year, about 1.5 fantasy points per minute. We know the ceiling he gives you. I think he's a little bit overpriced for his medium projection, especially when you have Kevin Durant for less, when you have Paul George for less. They're all, pretty similar, but I think that the range of outcomes for these guys is pretty much all the same. So ownership will dictate a lot of what I do.
We are on the same page for that one. What else are you trying to do with, say, Draymond, Wiggins, and Poole? Let's talk about the guys that get the minutes normally.
Yeah, I think Draymond still looks pretty good. He's playing 32 to 33 minutes in competitive games. You potentially could see maybe a couple more minutes here just because, Durant's playing 36 or 37 minutes, depending how badly, I guess, Golden State wants to win this game. But at 6,400, I think that's a very fair price tag for Green. Yeah. He's been a solid fantasy producer this year. So I think that looks pretty good. And then Poole is someone that we've seen his playing time ramp up a bit. He's pretty consistently getting you, 30 to 32 minutes. He didn't close against the Hornets last game for whatever reason, but typically he's in there and, getting you 32 minutes or so. He's still having his minutes staggered with Steph Curry, which is really important for him. So at 5,900, I think he looks like a good mid-range option as well. To me, Wiggins is the most difficult to get to. He's played a lot better lately, but for the season, he's just really struggled and been the, basically fourth fantasy option on this team behind Curry, Poole, and Green. So it's kind of tough for me to just all of a sudden decide that Andrew Wiggins is going to be a good fantasy option again. He's still not playing a ton of minutes. He played 32 last game. You've pretty much seen 30 to 32 all season. So, you can still, if the ownership is low, I think you can still, get there in tournaments. It's a 3-game slate. It's still someone with a ceiling. Right now he's at 12%, but I do think that to me, there's a bit of a difference between him and those other three.
Sure. And I think 12% is about right on a day where, you're just a hair under a fantasy point per minute guy playing 30 minutes. Like it's going to be what you're going to get by default on a 3-gamer.
So I guess like it is kind of him and Poole are averaging the same fantasy points per minute now.
So when you said that he's been bad, I have him as a 0.95 baseline. He's been at a 0.95 on FanDuel for the season, and I have him at 0.95 for the game. He's the only guy on my sheet that has the same number in all 3 columns.
Yeah, I don't know. He's like projected horribly for me all season, and he, for the most part, I've never regretted not having him. So kind of actually surprised that he's producing at the same rate as Poole.
I think one of the things is we're so naturally used to him playing 36 minutes and projecting for like 36 fantasy points that when you bring that down to 30 or 31 from a minutes perspective, it just visually looks a little bit different than what we've seen for Andrew Wiggins for 3-4 years.
I think it's also that Poole has typically been cheaper. So like you're getting basically the same playing time, if not an extra minute or two for Poole. You're getting the same production, but for Wiggins, it feels bad because he's like $600-700 more expensive all the time.
Yeah, his price is still coming down to new Wiggins territory. All right. I don't really know how to talk about this. No one is getting any ownership that I think that I need to like immediately touch on. What do we do with the rotation for Golden State? Because I have them in for 11 guys. The most likely scenario to me is that they all suck. But the real scenario here is that probably one of them becomes a value play you need. On FanDuel, we're lucky. All of these guys are over 4K except for Iguodala, who's 3,900. On DraftKings, these prices are scraping the bottom of the barrel, and someone could be good. I hate it.
Yeah, so do I. I tried this the other day. I don't remember if they played on I think it must have been like a 5-game Sunday slate or something. There was just like no value. So I tried the, play some Bielitsa, play some Iggy thing. And then they were like, oh, Kuminga's playing now too. And went to 11 guys. So I think Iggy is the one that I'm the most confident in, not from a production standpoint, but at least from a minute standpoint. You've seen him when he's in, typically playing like 20 to 24 minutes. Bielitsa only played 10 minutes last game. Kuminga was in the rotation. He played 10 minutes. Nobody played more than 16 minutes off the bench except for Iguodala. So that's where I would go first. I would love for Bielitsa to play more minutes. I think he's a good fantasy producer. I think Porter, is a solid producer as well, but these guys just aren't getting the run. So I think I just feel a little bit more confident in Iguodala. If there does end up being like a big ownership gap between these guys, then I'm more willing to take risks. But right now, Iggy's at 7% on DraftKings, Bielitsa's at 4%, Damian Lee is at 5%. If they're all going to come in about the same, I would rather just go to one that I think is going to play the most minutes.
Yeah. The only other guy and you haven't mentioned him, Gary Payton, is probable for today. He's 3,900 on DraftKings. That might be another one where you could see his minutes pop.
Yeah, but he's still just playing like 15, 20 minutes. I mean,
look, if I'm picking out of this entire list, I'm not saying like I like Gary Payton as a value play. I'm just ranking these guys on the Warriors.
Yeah, that's fair. And he has produced at a high level this year. He's at 1.09 DraftKings points per minute. He is a little bit more expensive at 3,900. So, you're paying a lot more for him than for like Iggy. But I'm with you. Like if he gets 16, 17 minutes here, he certainly could be fine.
And by the way, I agreed with you. I agree with you that Iggy is the first one. It's just so hard. It really is. And I think that the most likely scenario is that no one really plays the minutes that matter. The interesting piece to me is that it's Brooklyn. Do they treat this game differently than they would a different game?
That's kind of what I was alluding to with Draymond Green. Like you've been seeing him play like 32-minute rotations. Would it really be shocking to anybody if, we're halfway through the fourth quarter and you look and you're like, oh, wow, he's already at, 32 minutes or something. So, not that I'm going to project him for 38, but I don't think it would be surprising if you just kind of get a little bit more for the starters here from Golden State.
And that's also the other piece for me where if they were going to throw any extra minutes to someone in this rotation, it feels like it's Iggy,
right?
Just in this kind of game. I don't know if that's real or not. That's just a feeling. That would be where I would want to lean at least. And luckily on FanDuel, Iggy 3,900 shooting guard, small forward eligibility. It's really easy to like not play Kevon Looney at 4,800. It's really easy to not want to play Gary Payton at 4,700 or Bielitsa at 4,300. FanDuel has made these decisions pretty simple. DraftKings is where it's going to get wacky.
Speaking of Looney, I didn't mention him because he's not coming off the bench, but he's fine at 3,500. He's likely to play 18, 20 minutes. You're not expecting him to have the sort of game he had a couple of games ago when Draymond got hurt, obviously. But 3,500, if you're starving for value, he's fine.
Is there anything else that we can talk about here for the Warriors?
I don't think so.
Is there any way Damian Lee goes back to mid-20s?
He hasn't really been doing that in a while, has he?
Well, he played 15 the last one, missed 2 games. Then it was 18, 23, 21. I don't know. I mean, it could go any direction.
Like if you do that, you kind of there were games in there, I think, and I'm not positive. I think there were games Iggy missed in there too.
He missed one of those games. Right. Otto Porter missed one as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like for him to get to those 20 plus minutes, you can't, I don't think, have an 11-man rotation.
That is my assumption as well. Somebody asked on the process show this morning, like, I guess there was some like Gary Payton potentially could be out type talk. I was like, if Gary Payton's out, they probably just give like 12 minutes to Moses Moody and just still play 11 guys. Like or Juan Toscano Anderson. They're going to constantly throw dudes in there.
Yeah, exactly. Contrary to some beliefs at the beginning of the season, Steve Kerr loves some 11-man rotations.
He certainly does. Whatever happened to that person? Where's the guy that told us they don't ever do that?
Oh, they're still around.
Okay. Yeah. It happens if it's every day, every single day. Terry Florida Boy 420 sends us in a super chat. Said, hey, I love you two guys. I enjoy every show y'all on. I hit last Wednesday's Turbo 830 slate for 5K for first place. Also at 4th for 500. Thanks for awesome. All the videos. Keep up the good work. Congrats, man. It's great to see.
That's awesome. Love seeing
that. I bet that felt good. I'd like to do that today. Probably need to play
Josh can't relate, but it feels good.
Not this season. I mean, it's November. Talk to me in January when it's down 25 grand.
Talk to you in January when I've lost like 120K since now and that. And
yeah. Order of operations matters on this one. It's so much more fun to start like you did.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to Brooklyn. This is where it's going to get interesting. And I'm very happy to see the ownership right now, although I thought that I was going to be walking into a pretty interesting fade. We have no Joe Harris, so there's going to be some minutes to go around for Brooklyn's rotation today. James Harden, 10-2 on FanDuel, 10-6 on DraftKings. Durant, 10-6 on FanDuel, 10-3 on DraftKings. I will happily have both of them. I think that I like Harden and Durant more than I like Curry. I think that I sort of just get a little bit of all of these guys. I have an equal amount of Durant and Curry as of right now. I have a little bit more Harden, and that's on FanDuel where he's 10-2. Do you have anything in particular that you want to mention for Harden and Durant?
Not really, other than Durant's cheaper than Harden and he's a better fantasy producer, which is weird. 1.42 DraftKings points per minute for Durant this year, 1.34 for Harden. So not like it's a huge gap. Durant, the higher usage guy, Harden, the higher assist guy, but both do everything. So, it's from one game to the next, it's kind of a coin flip of who's going to get there. I just think it's interesting that Durant is the less expensive of the two.
And that's sort of the opposite for me on FanDuel, and that's why I'm going to get to slightly more James Harden, a little bit owned less and cheaper. So it's all the same to me. Now we talk about what we do with the rest of Brooklyn. And this is where they're sort of like the opposite of Golden State in that everybody's getting ownership. Patty Mills, the guy that started the second half in place of Joe Harris in their last game, is about 20% owned across both sites. Bruce Brown's about 15. Blake is 30 on FanDuel and 20 on DraftKings. Aldridge is 20 across both sites. By the way, LaMarcus Aldridge is 5,600 on FanDuel, and we've got him 20% owned. I'm going to get away from that one pretty quickly. I don't get the sense that he's going to play more than 22 minutes, since it seems like he plays 22 minutes in every game.
He might start missing some mid-range shots at some point.
Certainly could. DeAndre Bembry is 16% owned on FanDuel and 10% on DraftKings. Javon Carter is the flat 3K, only at 4%. That one is mildly appealing to me against Golden State. Shrug emoji. I know a lot of people in the process show were thinking Patty Mills was going to be like the obvious guy. And clearly he becomes a play at 3,800, but he's not a good fantasy performer. He needs every single one of those minutes and then needs to be just kind of good too.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 0.74 DraftKings point per minute guy. He's a better fantasy producer this year than Joe Harris. He's better than Bruce Brown. He's the same as Blake Griffin. He's better than Javon Carter. He's the same as Bembry. Like, yeah, I get it. He's not great, but I think he's a pretty obvious value, assuming he starts.
Yeah. Like, I got him in 22% of Sims, but the way people were looking at this when I woke up was just like, Patty Mills is going to be 65% owned because he's the value play getting more minutes. And he's just like not that kind of guy to get that big of a bump.
I think he gets a big bump in terms of ownership.
You think we were going to go a lot higher than 19 right now? Interesting.
Or we're just going to be wrong. Yeah.
Well, how many minutes do you expect Patty Mills to play? Let's start there.
30.
That's what I gave him to. I think around 20 is going to be correct. There's a little bit more value out there than it seems. Yeah, what do we do with the rest of this Brooklyn team though? Like, should Patty Mills be 5 to 4.5 to 1 on Javon Carter at the flat min? Maybe.
It's a spot where at least like it's one of those spots where I think Mills is clearly the better play. I mean, he's been well ahead of Carter all season in the rotation. If you look at what they did last game when in the second half when Harris was out, Carter did play a good amount, excluding garbage time. Carter still played like 11 and a half minutes. So, you're potentially looking at 22 minutes or so from Carter. Mills played 7, 10, 14, like 17 minutes. So, I mean, if you kind of mimic and he lost garbage time there, if you mimic the second half rotation, Mills is playing like 36 minutes and Carter's playing 22. I don't want to go that far. You see pretty often that when somebody gets hurt mid game, the second half rotation is like really condensed. And then going into the next game, the coach has a better plan of how to divvy up minutes. So I don't want to go that aggressive on Mills, but Carter did clearly get a bigger role. once Harris was hurt. He's 3K flat. So I do think that if there's a big ownership gap there, it makes sense in tournament lineups where you have some more popular plays to make that pivot. If I already have a couple contrarian pieces, I would rather just get Mills though.
Do you prefer Looney to Aldridge, given the ownership?
No.
Okay.
I just don't think Looney's ceiling is in the same ballpark.
That's fair.
Unless Draymond gets hurt.
If Aldridge is 20% owned on FanDuel, he'll be my biggest fade today. I won't even bat an eye at that at 5,600.
I'll fade Blake before I fade Aldridge on DraftKings.
I don't have that seems fine to me. Yeah, the price tag for me on Aldridge on FanDuel is the key stopping point. I don't expect him to play more than 22 minutes today. So if he doesn't, it's going to be really hard to beat 5,600.
And the thing to me,
especially against Golden State.
Aldridge, what'd you say?
Especially against Golden State.
Well, but we had talked about it the other day with Aldridge too, when he looked like a good play. To me, it's not even about like, can he succeed at his salary? It's like, does he ever is he capable in 22 minutes of giving you the game that you have to have? Or is his best game like, oh, that's good. I'm glad he did that, but there's going to be paths to win without him. And that's kind of the issue with the playing time is, it's a much smaller issue on a 3-game slate. And that's why I'm a lot more interested in him. But, like the other day was an 8-game or 9-game slate or whatever it was. And it was just like, okay, cool. Like, let's say Aldridge at 4,500 gets 35 points. That's really good, obviously, but there's no 50-point game in there. You know,
it's not possible.
And you still need a lot of raw points. Every roster spot is worth a lot. On a smaller slate, the opportunity cost isn't as high, so the roster spots aren't worth as much. So I'm more willing to go to one of those 22-minute guys. But right now we have Blake and Aldridge projected for about the same ownership. Blake's a little bit cheaper, but you're talking about guys that are likely to play about the same minutes. One of them's averaging 1.2 DraftKings points per minute this year. One's averaging 0.78. To me, I'm just getting Aldridge and not getting Blake.
Do you think there's any chance that Blake falls into more minutes today? I mean, he's clearly the guy that would over Aldridge. Or could, I guess I should say. He could.
I don't really view them that differently.
No, but like we have seen Blake get to, 30, 27, 26, 26, whereas Aldridge is basically 23 and they're giving him the paddles when he comes off.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is like Aldridge has been playing so well that
I'm not saying I think that it happens. Like Blake just has that ability, it seems.
Yeah. Blake, there's a better chance Blake plays 30 minutes than Aldridge plays 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think most likely it's like 26, 22 or something like that.
I got him in at 24, 22 right now, but I could see 26 for Blake in this spot because really, I don't think it just has to be Patty Mills. Somebody's going to be soaking this up. Are you going to be dusting off the DeAndre Bembrys of the world? Does James Johnson become available to you? Is today a day where Day'Ron Sharpe gets enough minutes to matter?
I do not know who that person is. I'm not going to lie.
I think he's going to be the fill-in for Paul Millsap today, potentially. Maybe Cam Thomas. I don't know. I don't think it'll matter. I don't think we're talking about either one of those guys like it matters. So
I just assume James Johnson will play more. But okay. I mean, he only played like 6 minutes last game anyway. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess Bembry would be the next guy I get to. Like he's the something goes wrong with Patty Mills / Javon Carter piece that would get more run. He played about 9 minutes in the second half after Harris got hurt. So, 18 minutes or so, certainly not any sort of a priority, but definitely, set grouping rules there, like between Mills, Bembry, and Carter.
Okay. We haven't said anything about Bruce Brown. I think he just kind of exists on this slate. 4,700 on FanDuel shooting guard, 4,200, but you get guard forward on DraftKings. It's 15% owned. That seems about right to me.
Yeah, I'm assuming he plays around 30 minutes. The issue for him is there's maybe a few more minutes available with Harris out. You could see, Brown pick up a few minutes, but he's still going to be playing so many minutes alongside Harden and Durant. He's only producing 0.67 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's cheap enough, he certainly can run into a good game in, increased playing time. But from a production standpoint, I think essentially he's kind of the same thing.
I think he's just going to be chasing Steph around for a lot of this one too, and maybe not trying to focus all that much on the offensive side of the ball because somebody's got to chase him around. And I don't get the sense it's going to be Patty Mills, James Harden, or Kevin Durant. So if Patty Mills is on Steph Curry, Steph Curry is going to have a lot today. It's not a good spot for him. It's going to be Carter and Bruce Brown getting a lot of that action, and Bembry, I guess, to a lesser degree.
Unless Durant just wants to play defense for whatever reason.
That ain't happening. He might be the guy that comes on the double, but
I still remember just like back in the day, like Golden State versus OKC when Durant was on OKC, and just like loading up on Steph Curry, and then like it being a game where I think he had torched them recently, and then like suddenly Kevin Durant is just like shadowing Steph, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be a good one.
No. So many guys available for Brooklyn, and it's just such a weird dichotomy against Golden State where you don't really have that. They kind of do the same thing, but you just don't have, you're not getting to anything from Golden State because it's just not possible.
Yeah, Brooklyn right now is sort of like Golden State if they were missing 2 or 3 of their bench guys.
Right. Although who the hell then G Leaguers would be playing for Steve Kerr at this point.
And had a different coach.
Anything else here for Brooklyn or Golden State?
No.
All righty. Let's talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be No House Advantage. I am pulling them up right now. You should pull them up as well. There's over 500 player props offered. It's 100% peer-to-peer, and all new users get a $25 deposit bonus when you use the promo code Awesemo. You can mass enter, got big prize pools. We have No House Advantage projections and optimal lineups posted at awesemo.com to help you take down these contests. You can download the app in the App Store or go directly to No House Advantage if you would like. I'm going to hit Adam with a prop or two, and we're going to start, obviously, with the Golden State and Brooklyn game. Let's go to Steph Curry right out of the gate. Over under 31.5 real points for Steph.
31.1 is under, I guess.
Okay. I got the under as well. Don't ever feel good about taking a Steph Curry under in scoring. That's not a fun way to watch it happen.
And it sucks too, because when Steph gets hot, it's so fun to watch. And so like, if you're losing money on it, you're just like ruining one of the more fun things that can happen when you're watching basketball.
Yeah, that's not a sweat that anyone should be really trying to do. Let's just say that. On the opposite side, we'll go and take a peek at James Harden. Over under 21.5 real points.
21.2. I guess under.
Yeah, I got 22.4, so I would technically take the over.
Yeah, I mean, just wouldn't take either of those.
I completely agree. I would try to avoid it. Patty Mills over under 9.5 points.
Over.
Yeah. That one probably not adjusted because Joe Harris still is a part of this. So these lines don't change. That's something you guys should remember. Patty Mills likely to be one of the better props that you'll find on this slate just by default. We shall keep it moving. Philly, 9-point dogs in Utah, 217 total. And for Philly, slowly but surely people coming back. And by people, I mean Tobias Harris and really no one else. We have no Danny Green, no Joel Embiid, no Matisse Thybulle. Rudy Gay continues to be out for Utah. I think Tobias Harris is the best play on the slate on FanDuel. He is 7,700 small forward, power forward eligibility. He's also 41% owned. I will soar over that number if it holds. Tyrese Maxey is 8,100 on FanDuel now, 7,200 on DraftKings. I actually still want to get to a lot of them because there's a decent chance he plays every minute of the game. I got him in for 38. I probably should make it 40 given what he's done over the past 2 weeks, but it felt really weird to type that in. I'm still getting to him a lot, so it doesn't matter. We've got Curry, Drummond. I'm assuming Korkmaz is the starter for today in place of George Hill or in that 5th spot. I have no reason to suspect otherwise. What are we doing with Philly? Who stands out most to you?
DraftKings pricing is pretty aggressive here.
Yeah. This is a very different team on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm with everything you said. Tobias Harris this year has played a total of 99 minutes without Embiid. He's at 1.24 DraftKings points per minute, 32.9% usage rate, 28.8% assist percentage. The opportunities are there. Clearly the matchup sucks. Utah is a good team defensively. They're in Utah, which is a difficult place to play. They're shorthanded, which obviously it increases the opportunities for Harris, but it also makes it easier for Utah to potentially make life difficult for Harris. So I agree that he looks good. It's just, it comes down to the pricing. 8,500, I think, is a price on DraftKings where he's still playable in tournaments. He's still got a very high ceiling. If Philly hangs in this game, it's likely that Harris is playing really, really well. But it's also, I think, pretty correctly priced. Maxey, kind of the same thing. I'm with you. I think he plays huge minutes. He's also up to $7,200 on DraftKings, which is a hell of a price tag. He's at 0.97 DraftKings points per minute this year without Embiid on the floor. Not all of those minutes obviously had Tobias Harris, since Harris missed time as well. So I would expect that to go down a little bit, but you also, potentially have a little bit more efficiency with Harris out there. So I think, still close to a point per minute guy on average, below average matchup, so a little bit below that, but huge minutes, still an expensive price tag. Korkmaz, Seth Curry. Korkmaz, I'm assuming, slides into the starting lineup and plays big minutes again. He's been really hit or miss this year. You've seen the assist percentage come up a little bit, the usage rate come up. You've seen some just horrible shooting games, but still gives you a pretty decent ceiling at 4,600. Curry at 5,400, I think is okay, but still pretty correctly priced. And then you have Drummond, who 8,700. There's still upside there, but it is getting closer to correct. I think he's at 1.32 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's likely to play a bunch of minutes if this game's competitive, probably 33, 34 minutes or so. So I think he's fine, but again, just not the same sort of like lock button play that he was for the first week or so.
What do you think of that $8,100 tag on Maxey on FanDuel?
It's very expensive.
It is very expensive. Are you giving him 38 or 40?
40. I don't think I wouldn't get to him at 38. I don't know if I get to him at 40.
I'm getting to him at 40. No problem, actually, given the current ownership, but I might end up at 40 by the time all is said and done. I do want to touch on this.
Clarify that. I meant and I know you know this, but I meant if I just run any sort of optimal lineup, I'm not getting to him.
Sure. Absolutely.
Not that I'm just not playing him in tournaments.
Right. I want to touch on this one piece for Harris. Not that I think that it matters all that much. And on FanDuel, it really doesn't matter. The Utah Jazz give up the second most shots in the mid-range of any team in the league. Tobias Harris is 88th percentile in mid-range frequency. So Harris lives in the mid-range. Utah is happy to give up the mid-range. They don't really have any good point of attack defenders outside of really Royce O'Neal. I think that we're basically just crossing our fingers that Tobias Harris makes those mid-range shots. That's in theory the most difficult shot you're going to be taking on the court from a expected value perspective. But I think he's going to have the opportunity to shoot and shoot and shoot from the mid-range. And that's really why I like Harris, because I think he fits this matchup perfectly. Whether that works out or not, it's all about whether the buckets go in. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Tobias Harris with a staggering high shot attempt day today.
Yeah, I think that's a good take.
Drummond, Korkmaz, all the starters here I think look pretty solid. Seth Curry, some of these prices are just nuts. What can we do with the bench? Can you get to George Niang? Can you get to Shake Milton? I don't really see them as all that appealing.
I don't see them as that appealing. I see them as somewhat appealing because it's a 3-game slate. And so, they're certainly in play. It's basically just, if Korkmaz shoots poorly and Niang comes in and lights it up, he'll close over Korkmaz if the game's close. Milton, I think, has a more difficult path to minutes, but it's not depending on what lineup Utah closes with, you potentially could get, small enough lineups where you just get Maxey, Curry, Milton out there. I don't think it's super likely, but I would set a rule not to have more than 2 of Curry, Milton, Maxey. But I think Niang has the clearer path to getting unexpected minutes. I think Milton's the better fantasy producer, so it kind of evens out. But either way, I think it's basically somebody ahead of them has to play poorly.
I'm with you on that one. By the way, I think Seth Curry really fits the bill too for this being a really good matchup. Someone that doesn't get to the rim at all, that's good. You don't want to get to the rim against Rudy Gobert. That's going to be a bad time. Clearly can shoot some threes, but 94th percentile of wings in shots in the mid-range. He's going to be coming off a lot of screens, shooting 2s and 3s, and that's perfectly okay against Utah. Utah's just going to stop you from doing anything at the rim. And so if you could try to attack with guys that don't need that as a skill set, that's probably going to lean a little bit better. It's not something that I'm actively making changes for, but they are the type of guys that I'll be happy to see that I'm over on.
Yeah, and to be fair, I've been over on Seth Curry every chance I've gotten with Embiid out. It typically hasn't worked, but I wouldn't be surprised if I kind of get there again today.
All righty. Anything else for Philly?
No, I hate this spot, and I hate that it's a 3-game slate, so I have to play it.
Yes, I agree. Luckily for us, Utah just has everybody available. So normally this would be like, oh, we don't really give a shit about Utah today. But on
normally
a 3-gamer,
this would be play Donovan Mitchell because I like him more than everybody else does for like the 18th time.
Well, I'm already 2x the field on FanDuel on Donovan Mitchell, so we're in the same ballpark. 8,800 on FanDuel, 8,600 on DraftKings. He's about 28% owned across both. I have 50 right now, and I am more than okay with it. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate.
Yeah, I think he looks really good. 8,600 on DraftKings, just a very fair price tag. He played like 37 minutes last game, which that's a lot. He's in a lot of games this year been playing like 33, 34. It's kind of been the only knock against him, but he's producing at a really high level. 1.31 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 34% usage rate, 27% assist percentage. He's basically so far this season, not saying that, he doesn't come down a little bit and or Harden doesn't go up a little bit going forward. He's having the same fantasy season as James Harden, and he's $2,000 less expensive. So I just have a hard time not liking him at that price tag. He is getting a lot of ownership. He's the 4th highest owned guy on the slate right now. Normally he's relatively low owned, and I love getting to him then, but still, I just think 8,600 is a pretty nice discount. And there's not a ton on this slate in that price range. You have a lot of guys that are more expensive. You have a lot of cheaper mid-range guys. So from a roster construction standpoint too, I think it's just going to pretty frequently end up being like, okay, cool, Donovan Mitchell fits, I can move on.
Is Rudy Gobert the best center option on DraftKings today? 7,700.
Probably, yeah. Getting $1,000 discount off of Drummond. I mean, obviously, I still like Drummond in any matchup, but Gobert's salary just keeps coming down. He's at 1.28 DraftKings points per minute for the season. He's likely to play, I would assume, like 33, 34 minutes. Probably they'll probably try and play him for however many minutes Drummond plays, I would think. So I think, yeah, he looks really good. I think Mitchell looks really good. And then there's a drop off to like guys that I think are secondary plays.
Yeah, he's flying to the top of my center list right now. The only other guy picking up a lot of ownership on either site is $5,700 Mike Conley on FanDuel, and I think that makes sense because he's 5,700. Do you have any additional thoughts to that particular ownership?
What was it?
Conley's at 29% on FanDuel. He's 5,700.
I mean, it's a good price tag. I assume he's going to play around 30 minutes. 28 to 30, I guess, is where I would expect him to play. He's at about a fantasy point per minute. So he just seems fine. Like, I'm not going out of my way to get to Conley, but if I need something at that price tag, I'm certainly not looking at a Mike Conley lineup and saying like, oh, I need to redo this. Yeah,
I think that's proper ownership given that price tag and being a fantasy point per minute guy. What do we do with the rest of Utah, though? Royce O'Neal, Boyan, Ingles, Clarkson. If Rudy Gobert's ownership creeps up, Whiteside, what do we do here?
I'm always interested in Clarkson in tournaments. He's projected for 14% ownership right now. He's not been very... It seems like he hasn't been very good this season. He's still averaging 0.92 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 47.1% true shooting percentage. You're going to see some blow-up games from him. He has a 20
played 32 and a half minutes last game, too.
Yeah, he has a 28.8% usage rate. He's typically giving you like 24, 25 minutes, but if he's playing well, there's a path to more minutes for him. He can take minutes from any number of guys in the closing lineup. You basically, the only guys guaranteed to close in any sort of normal situation for Utah are Mitchell and Gobert. Conley normally, but he can lose minutes. There's plenty of times that O'Neal isn't going to be out there, especially if you're playing from behind, which isn't likely to be the case here. Bogdanovich normally going to be out there, but he's replaceable as well. So there's kind of like just 3 different guys that if Clarkson's playing well, he can get closing minutes from, which is really appealing to me in tournaments because it's not just, oh, Jordan Clarkson can beat this price tag in his normal 24, 25 minutes. It's if Jordan Clarkson's lighting it up, he's just going to stay on the floor most likely.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how to project that, but I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I mean,
what will you give him from a minutes perspective?
Like 25.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean he's just one of those guys where it's why you whether you're using randomness or some other function to account for variance, like that's why you use it. And on somebody like Clarkson, you're typically going to just have a little bit more of it because you have performance variance and you also have a pretty big gap in range of playing time.
The problem with Clarkson is he's self-fulfilling. if he's going to get 31 or 32 minutes, he's probably playing well.
Yeah, that's also the good thing about him, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is when you have him.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's one of those where if you just kind of if you view the NBA season as like one long game and you're not going to get bogged down in, I played a bunch of Jordan Clarkson and he sucked for the 5th straight time. Yeah. And you're just viewing it as, I love rostering 5K guys that are going to get 5 minutes more than projected if he's playing well. It doesn't have to be tonight. It doesn't have to be tomorrow night. I know that I'm going to get enough of it over the course of a season that I'm going to be in some really good spots.
We have Boyan on FanDuel at 23% ownership, 5,100. Clarkson, 16% owned, 5,300. It's incredible to me that Boyan is cheaper than Jordan Clarkson. I mean, I guess it makes some sense, but surprising.
Yeah, he doesn't produce at the same level, but he's still someone that has a decent ceiling. He's got a 23% usage rate. He's at 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. On average, he's going to play 5 minutes, 6 minutes more than Clarkson. So yeah, I think Clarkson's the one that's more likely to break a slate where you have to have him kind of thing. Yeah. But Bogdanovich, I think, is a good value as well.
Anything else we need to touch on from Utah?
Why is Joe Ingles so terrible this year?
He's just old, man.
He is doing nothing.
No.
I get nervous every time I look at his projection. I'm like, Ingles is 4,300. We're probably getting to a point I should start playing him. And I'm like, no, I still haven't projected as a bad play.
And he should have been the 6th man of the year last year. It's craziness.
He has a 62% true shooting percentage this year, and he's still only averaging 0.67 DraftKings points per minute.
Yeah, he's not doing anything now. It's nuts. Dude, don't miss, though.
Yeah. 12% usage rate.
Yeah. Thank you very much to Robin with the monster Canadian super chat. Said, you boys are great. Came in 4th yesterday in the big tourney. I've been listening to you guys for years. Love your knowledge of the sport and advice. Bang. That's awesome. Sorry that the payout structure sucks. Well, it depends which 4th, but either way, it sucks. But it's been particularly brutal on FanDuel as of late.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's really fun. You feel good, but it's also really frustrating. But congrats.
Either way, congrats. Yeah, that's awesome. All righty. We got one more game to go here, but I do want to mention, if you're looking to sign up at Awesemo.com, you can use the promo code NBA Strategy Show. One word, $29.95 gets you access to all of our projections, ownership, premium Slack, lineup builder, boom bust, all that good stuff. $29.95. Or if you're not interested in that particular promo code, which you can see on the screen right now, you can just sign up for a weekly package, $16.95. That's just for the NBA only. Since you're watching an NBA show, I assume that's what you want. Or NBA weekly express package for just $4.95. Stop guessing and start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Final game, San Antonio Spurs at the Los Angeles Clippers. Jake Puddle still out for the Spurs. Marcus Morris and Serge Ibaka both out for the Clippers. Terrence Mann is questionable. Slight ankle sprain. Everything that I read said we probably shouldn't worry about it. So that's what I'm doing right now. Highest owned guy on FanDuel is Derek White at 5,200. He's 30% owned. Highest owned guy on DraftKings, 6K Keldon Johnson at 26%. Here are the ownerships for the first 8 guys listed in my sheet. This is Murray, Johnson, White, Vassell, McDermott, Walker, Young, and Eubanks. 17, 26, 20, 13, 14, 13, 16, 18. Looks like we play all of the Spurs in random orders.
Yeah, pretty much where I'm at. I do think this is a spot where potentially you see a couple more minutes for Eubanks, a couple less for Thaddeus Young, maybe closer to like a 24-24 split as opposed to 22-26 or 21-27. Certainly, could go, still could get the bulk of the minutes for Young, but I think that it's likely against, Zubats and Hartenstein that you get a little bit more for Eubanks. But either way, they both look like good values. I just typically wouldn't play them in the same lineup because they are essentially not playing alongside each other. And if one of them plays really well, they'll probably take minutes from the other one. So just set a rule. One of Young, one of Eubanks, both look like pretty good values. Keldon Johnson playing huge minutes in games that are competitive and he doesn't get hurt in the middle of recently. Played another 38.7 minutes against the Lakers on Sunday. So I think you mentioned he's getting a lot of ownership. I think it's deserved at 6K. He's just a pretty solid option. Derek White's salary has come down to where I think I probably finally start getting them. He has not been great this year. You've kind of seen DeJounte Murray take a step forward and it take quite a bit of production away from Derek White, but he's still at 0.88 DraftKings points per minute. He's still likely to play 32 minutes or so. Salary down to 5,400 looks pretty reasonable. Murray 9,500, sticker shock there. Definitely looks expensive, but at the same time, same fantasy points per minute this year as Donovan Mitchell, same fantasy points per minute, give or take, as James Harden, $9,500 price tag. Going to be very interested to see where ownership ends up being on Murray. Right now, we have him at 17% on DraftKings, which I think is reasonable. If that were to come down, though, and you were to see, James Harden go up, or just kind of like those, like Mitchell go up, Harden go up, Murray come down a little bit, then I would start to be really, really, really interested in Murray.
True shooting on Derek White this season, 48%.
Not very good. What was he at last year?
I'm working on it. I was on Wowie, not like a source that had it above it.
I'm looking at effective field goal
55.
percentage. So he was at his effective field goal percentage last year was 50.3%.
Yeah. This year it's 45.
It is 45.1.
Yeah. So that'll help too, just being not the drizzling shits. Yeah. I got him in a 0.9 for today. Not true shooting, like fantasy points per minute, which seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, like he only has a 16.7% usage rate this year, but he's still he's not shooting well on that usage, and he's still averaging 0.88 DraftKings points per minute. It's just, for a lot of the season early on, I think he was more popular than he should have been. Now getting down to 5,400, it's a pretty tough price tag to fail at.
Vassell, not a guy that I'm likely to get to on FanDuel all that much. He's 5,700. That's $1,000 more expensive than he is on DraftKings. A lot of these guys are more expensive. McDermott's $900 more expensive. Lonnie Walker, $1,200 more expensive. I am getting to Lonnie Walker because he's 5% owned. Thad Young, Drew Eubanks are both significantly more expensive on FanDuel than DraftKings. I'm a little bit lighter on those guys. Salary is just crazy today on FanDuel in comparison to DK. Very, very different builds and slates between FanDuel and DraftKings.
I'm kind of surprised Lonnie Walker is not getting more ownership on DraftKings.
Same. I have him as maybe like the best play relative to current ownership.
Right. It's not that you're super confident he's going to play a lot of minutes. He only played 18 and a half minutes last game, but it's that there's a pretty clear path to him getting more minutes. Vassell closed the last game. McDermott closed the last game. McDermott has been absolute garbage this year. It wouldn't be surprising at all to see Walker in any given game take minutes from McDermott. You potentially can see him get minutes from Vassell as well. So I think at 3,700, 12% ownership on Walker seems a little bit low to me.
I'm with you. And close this out with the Clippers.
Yep.
Well, remember what I said about the Spurs? Guess what? We're doing that again here for the Clippers. Here are the first 8 names: George, Jackson, Batum, Bledsoe, Mann, Kennard, Zubac, Hartenstein. 32, 26, 22, 25, 14, 16, 19, 19. Play all of the Clippers. Now, Paul George is the guy getting the most ownership across both sites. I think that is more than reasonable. I think that is well-deserved. Reggie Jackson, probably the guy getting the second most. I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't have much else to add here, so I'm just going to throw it to you. Who stands out in the sea of Clippers that we have to play?
So I'm with you on George. He's been great this year. He's only 10-2. Multi-position eligibility on DraftKings is really useful as well with guard and forward. So I think he looks great. Jackson probably playing 36 minutes at 6,100 looks pretty good. I like Zubac at 4,900. I am a little concerned because we'd seen his playing time start to ramp up recently. In their last game against the Bulls, the Clippers closed with the small lineup with Kennard, Jackson, Batum, George, and Bledsoe. They were the first ones to sub out their center. Hartenstein subbed out before Tony Bradley did. And then, both teams closed small. So I'd kind of said at the top for the Spurs that I liked the Eubanks Young combo, and that you could see Eubanks play a couple more minutes here. I think that depends on what the Clippers do also. So not only do I think you should be setting a rule that Eubanks and Young aren't together, but and I guess I don't want to set a rule here, but I think that it's all just fluid. Like if Thaddeus Young closes this game for the Spurs, you're potentially getting less minutes for Zubac, more minutes for like Kennard or Mann or somebody. So 3-game slate, I don't want to get too bogged down in restricting what my lineups look like, but I guess it's more actionable. Like if you're hand building, if you're on the fence about what to do, like if you have Thaddeus Young in a lineup, lean more towards like these wings on the Clippers. I think that could be in a small closing lineup.
So I think I've got the sleeper here. I could be wrong because a lot of the minutes that he got were blowout run, but he was able to do it. Justice Winslow played 21 minutes on the 13th, did not play on the 14th in the front end or on the back end of that back-to-back, but he showed that he can play 21 minutes. Now, all of those, a large chunk of those minutes happened in fourth quarter blowout time, but he's the flat 3K point guard, small forward eligible. I don't expect him to play 20 minutes today, but if he can play 20 minutes today at point guard, small forward in the flat 3K, I think that he should be owned more than the 1% we're projected.
I agree with that. I think the most likely scenario is he plays like 12 minutes or something.
That's exactly where I have him, and I don't think it'll ultimately be relevant.
Right.
I didn't think that he could play 21 minutes, and he did.
The thing that makes it tough for me to not like the reason that I only go to like 12 is they have so many wings that like even if they close small, you have Batum, Bledsoe, George, Jackson, Mann, Kennard, probably all getting potential closing minutes before him.
Yeah.
But 1 game sample, 1% owned, 3-game slate. I do agree there. Also, if Terrence Mann were to sit, that's a lot of minutes that become available for a guy that can play a lot of different positions.
Absolutely. It gets really squirrely if Mann sits. The problem for me right now is that I think I really like Terrence Mann. You get the shooting guard, small forward eligibility, mid-4s price tag, and just no ownership whatsoever. 13% on DraftKings, 24 on FanDuel is a little bit more extreme, but if he's 13% owned, I don't know if that's just a function of his status. I don't think it changes his ownership at all. We've got 1 game at 7:30. I can't imagine we know anything about Terrence Mann until like 9:45, 10 o'clock. It's not like there's going to be a ton of opportunities to move around to get more Terrence Mann once he's in. I think he's underrepresented today so far.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I typically have a little bit of trouble getting to him for whatever reason. He just never projects that well. But like he's likely to play 30 to 32 minutes here. He's only at 0.76 DraftKings points for the season, only a 14% usage rate. But he's just one of those guys where he doesn't do any one thing really well, but he does everything like somewhat well. So he can just he has like a variety of ways to run into big games, whether it's grabbing like 100 rebounds down the stretch, like we saw a week or two ago, he gets hot and gets more shots up or whatever. So one thing I guess I would point out, he's the same salary as Devin Vassell in kind of that same role. And Vassell's averaging like 0.2 of a fantasy point more per minute this year. So I think I would get to Vassell before I get to Mann. But I think that, I agree with you. He's still low owned for someone that has a pretty high ceiling.
This game's going to have so much ownership in it, and it's going to feel like you have every single piece of it.
Yeah.
Which is not fun for a sweat. It's great for a sweat perspective in that you might have that combination that you need. But I mean, there are like legitimately 16 guys to roster from this Clippers Spurs game that are not just like, I can see it. Like, I'm not counting Justice Winslow. I can see that. There are 8 guys that I think you have to have on both teams if you're playing 150 lineups today.
Yeah, pretty much. I think this is a game where rules are just going to be really, really important. It's a good one. I hadn't really mentioned. I mentioned that I didn't want like Young and Eubanks together, but I think using the boost feature in Fantasy Cruncher, if you're playing 150 lineups, is a good way to go here. Because like, again, I don't want to just say, if I have Eubanks, don't play Terrence Mann or something. But I think going a route like if Thaddeus Young bumped the projections for Mann, Kennard by 5% or whatever, doing something like that makes sense. If I have Eubanks bump Zubac's projection by 5%, something like that. Limiting the amount of Vassell, McDermott, and Walker you get together, for example. So I just think it's a game where you don't necessarily want to set a lot of like very strict, hard and fast rules, but I think using boosts to try and account for what different closing lineups would mean for the opposing team is a good way to go.
Anything else you want to touch on for this game?
No.
I'm going to hit you with the question that everybody's going to want before we get out of here. Steph Curry, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Paul George. They are the 4 guys north of 10K today. Rank the studs.
George is going to be the easiest to get in the lineup. So I'll put him 1. Like, I think all these guys are functionally the same. So I'll say George 1, Durant 2, Curry, Harden's 4 for me. It's just a matter of Curry versus Durant, because Curry's a little bit lower owned, but Durant's less expensive.
Yeah.
So I think it's George 1.
Plus Curry just point guard.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Durant's a little easier to get in lineups. Yeah, I'll say George 1, Durant 2, Curry 3, Harden 4. But again, ownership, I said this at the top when we talked about Steph. Ownership's going to drive a lot for me between those guys.
Deep dive later today. Deeper dive at 5:30.
Yep.
All righty, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Don't be afraid to hit that like button one last time. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor. This is a fun slate. Not too much that we really need to be waiting on. I'm excited for it. Can't wait to get to it. Good luck tonight, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.